So now we're going to talk about realism. So one of the first appearance of the term realism was in the Mercury François de Suzuki in 1886, or the 19th century. Mercury was in the French literary magazine that was published in 1823 to 1830. It was edited by Henry de Latouche and was famous for the first published use of the word realism applied in literature. So now, what is realism? The realism art period was stylistic and movement and social movement that began in France in the mid-19th century. The realism movement rejected the artistic approach of the Romantic period that had preceded it, which glorified nature and heroic figures. Before realism, painting and sculpture had been concerned with rendering biblical and mythological figures that exalted the best of humanity. Human figures were presented as classical Greek ideas with perfect bodies and beautiful unblemished faces. So, after the Romantic period, the realism period takes place, where it started in France, and as we all know, Romantic era was gave so much attention to nature and heroic figures, but realism emerged to reject this Romantic era. Realism artists, on the other hand, began to paint human subjects as they really existed in all their flaws, suffering, and imperfections. They wanted to hold up the regular people as worthy of artistic representation. The realism movement grew out of 1848 revolution in France that established people's right to work and focused on workers' rights, and in this way, it was as much as a political as an aesthetic movement. So, realist artists began to use human as their subject on their artworks to give so much emphasis as humans are also worthy of artistic representation beside having flaws, suffering, and imperfections. In this movement, it grew and began to evolve in the revolution in France, whereas it established the right to work to every French person, and also it focused on workers' rights on that time. So the realism artistic movement rejected romanticism, the art, literature, music, architecture, and philosophy movement which had preceded it in the first half of the 19th century. Realism art's characteristics. So the first characteristic of realism art is accurate representation. Realism aims to depict subjects as they appear in real life, often focusing on everyday scenes and ordinary people. Artists strive for accuracy in portraying details, whether in landscape, portraits, or still life. So artists in realism period mainly focused on the everyday life of the people and work more in giving accurate and truthful details about the people's everyday life. So the next one is the naturalistic colors. Realist paintings typically use naturalistic colors to mimic the appearance of the real world. Colors are often subdued and grounded, reflecting the natural hues of the subject matter. So artists in this era typically use the color of the real world, where these colors mimic the appearance of what is the real world all about. So the next one is focus on everyday life. Realism often depicts scenes from everyday life, including urban and rural settings, work environments, and domestic scenes. Artists may explore themes such as social issues and class struggles and the human condition. So realism also really focuses on the everyday life of the people, where it depicts the life in urban and rural settings or areas, and also the work environments of each and everyone, and also the domestic scenes. So artists in this era also have themes where such as social issues, human condition, and class struggles in that period of time. The next one is it rejecting idealization. Unlike Romanticism, which often idealized the world and portrayed it through a lens of emotion and imagination, realism rejects idealization in favor of presenting life as it is, with all its imperfection and complexities. So, realism arts also has a character which it rejects the idealization which was presented by the Romanticism or the Romantic period of arts. Realism wants to reject idealization in favor to present life as it is with its imperfections and complexities. So the last one is the attention to social commentary. Many realist artists use their work to comment on social, political, and economic issues on their time. They may critique social injustices, class disparities, or the other effects of industrialization and urbanization. So, last characteristic of realism art is that it gives commentary or comment to the social, political, and economic issues of their time, especially at the France or especially in the French government. They also critique social injustices, class disparities, or the effects of industrialization and urbanization to their country or to the real world. So the next one is, so to sum it up, the realism art's characteristic is, first, it rejected romantic ideals, or it rejected the main point of romantic period of art. Next one is represented subjects as they were. Next is it focused on everyday people, settings, and situation. Last one, it responded to a new national emphasis on workers. So examples of realism arts. The first one is one of the most important early realism artists was Gustave Courbet, whose work The Stonebreakers in 1850 depicts many of the features of realism painting, such as focus on everyday worker and setting. So in this art, Courbet wants to show what is real, and so he has depicted a man that seemed too old and a boy that's still too young for such back-breaking labor. This is not meant to be heroic, it is meant to be an accurate account of the abuse and the deprivation that was a common feature of mid-century French natural life. So the next one is the Gleaners 1857 by Jean-Francois Millet, which depicts women picking up loose grain in the field like the Stonebreakers. The painting is meant to depict both the hardship and the dignity of regular people are working, bringing empathy and recognition to their difficult station in life. So the entire composition is in fact a commentary in the social classes of France, and in particular on the inability of the lower classes to rise above their station. So the next one is a famous example of American realism painting is the Gross Clinic 1875 by the influential Philadelphia artist Thomas Eakins. Because of its realistic depiction of blood and viscera on the opening table, the painting was originally considered too graphic for exhibition, a powerful testament to its realism art characteristic. So in this portrait, it is the portrait of Dr. Samuel D. Gross, an internationally celebrated surgeon And this painting depicts the Philadelphian physician and the members of his clinic performing bone surgery on a young man, and others believe that the woman beside the doctor cringing is the mother of the patient. So the next one is the Flowing in the Nirvana, 1849, by realism artist Rosa Ben-Hur, one of the most prolific female painters of the 19th century. Ben-Hur specialized in realistic depictions of the animals. So this example is a hymn to agricultural labor whose grandeur was magnified because in this post-evolutionary days, it was easy to contrast with the corruption of the city. It is also tribute to provincial regions. Here, the Nirvana, with its agricultural tradition and rural landscapes. So the last example is Gustave Courbet's Women with a Parrot, is a stunning example of realism art from the mid-19th century. The painting depicts a young woman dressed in rich fabrics and holding a parrot in hand. Set against an imposing dark background, Courbet's attention to detail is remarkable. He captures every nuance in the woman's body, facial expression, and even the bird's feathers. So, this Gustave's painting is considered as one of his finest nude painting. Women with a Parrot shows a willingness to adapt to others. The parrot therefore came to embody both the exotic and the erotic. So, with a Parrot, Courbet suggests a daring mix of references. To sum everything up, realism and art emerged in mid-19th century as a reaction to romanticism and idealized depictions of life. Realist artists began to paint human subjects as they really existed in all their flaws, suffering, and imperfections. They wanted to hold up regular people as worthy of artistic representation. Realism art often deals with subjects such as poor and working class lives to show the truth of the world through the depiction of reality. Realism in art can include many subjects or many different subjects, but it does have a few defining characteristics. Subject matter that is honest and believable, a non-decorative style, and disregard for the techniques found in classic art are three of the common characteristics found in realism art. So that is realism art. Thank you.